Okay. Specifically.
Awesome.
We're 100% in attendance, and so therefore, okay, so what I'm thinking is let's try to get through, let's go through these House bills, which hopefully won't take that much time, and then that'll leave us some time for some of these Senate bills, which could be a little more involved. So why don't we start with you, Alexis? Let's just go down the row on voting list 25, which are House bills, and see, can just get through a lot of these, and then two of the bills on the House list are also on the Senate. The cross files are on the Senate bill list too. So
House Bill 124 is a mandated reports bill. This is a layover bill from yesterday. Essentially, it updates all of the mandated reports within the state, not all of them, but several agencies chimed in about modifying current reports, repealing certain reports, et cetera. The distinction between the House bill and the Senate version has passed, and we also have a concurrence that reflects this distinction, that the House bill incorporates a few amendments from the Department of the Environment. Their recommendation was they wanted to make sure reports were aligned as it pertains to wastewater and waste diversion. So they do a couple of things. They modify the yearly reporting date from the Commission on Climate Change from November to December. They clarify that the annual report date on water supply, sewerage, and refuse disposal systems shall be by December 31st of each year instead of just each year. They codify an ongoing report on sewage disposal services, clarifies the reporting dates from the Bay Restoration Fund Advisory Committee specific to wastewater facilities, and also clarifies a reporting date from the Office of Recycling, modifies the reporting dates on waste management and waste diversion. And these are also in your packet. Maybe helpful to point out on page 3 to page 6 of the packet.
okay, Senator Augustine.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so the posture of this House bill is different than the Senate bill?
So it will be if we accept the concurrence and we move favorable on the House bill, they will be identical. If we modify the House bill in any way, that'll take it outside of the posture of what the Senate has done. But if we move the way it is drafted, the way it was presented, the two will be aligned.
So the Senate bill, which has been voted by the House,
Right.
they didn't change it.
They changed it to reflect this.
The House bill. So we would have to not change this bill.
That's right. The recommendation, the idea would be to move this one clean so that the two match.
Okay, I understand.
Does everyone understand that? Okay, so a clean.
I'll make that
Okay, so we
motion.
have this is a move this clean and align
clean.
it with the Senate bill. So we have a favorable and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of that motion on House Bill 124, raise your hand. All opposed? Bill carries unanimously. Let's next go to House Bill 152. April?
House Bill 152, Department of Agriculture, Urban Agriculture Grant Programs alterations. This bill is not cross-filed, so this is one of the House bills that we heard last week. The bill modifies the Urban Agriculture Grant Program by mandating a minimum amount of funding, $100,000 annually for the program from fiscal 2025 through 2029, expanding eligibility for grants under the program, making them available directly to urban agricultural producers and to specified nonprofit organizations and institutions of higher education. And 3, modifying provisions relating to the grant process and the use of the grants. The bill also expands the definition of urban agricultural producer under both the Urban Agriculture Grant Program and the Urban Agriculture Water and Power Infrastructure Grant Program.
There's no amendments. Any discussion? We have a motion from Senator Gallion, favorable. Any second? Senator Washington, any discussion? Again, favorable, clean. House Bill 152, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? That bill carries unanimously. Next up, April, House Bill 161, which is a interesting sponsor line, Corman Shalega. I don't think I've seen that one before.
House Bill 161, Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority, evaluation, termination of bond authority, and assumption of functions, employees, and contracts, the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority Sunset Act. This bill terminates the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority's bond authority beginning June 1st, 2023. The bill also requires the Department of Legislative Services to conduct a specified evaluation and the Maryland Environmental Service to conduct a specified review and analysis of the disposal authority. The disposal authority must provide information to those entities and cooperate as specified. By December 1st, 2024, Department of Legislative Services and Maryland Environmental Service must submit reports on their evaluation to specified legislative committees and the Maryland General Assembly, respectively. Among other things, the Department of Legislative Services report must include draft legislation to merge the disposal authority into the Maryland Environmental Service. This bill further requires the Maryland Environmental Service to temporarily assume the functions, employees, and contracts of the disposal authority during any merger until the entity with which the disposal authority merges is prepared and ready to assume those functions, employees, and contracts. And 2, an entity that assumes a portion or all of the functions, employees, or contracts to establish a system for maintaining stakeholder engagement. Again, this is a bill that was not cross-filed and was heard last week.
Okay, any discussion? Senator Gallion.
So I think I may have missed this bill hearing, so I was just catching up here, and I noticed that Harford County government came in unfavorable. I guess that's still current. I know we're getting late, Mr. Chair, but would you mind if we just held this so I could just double check with them?
Yeah, that's fine. Just you weren't here at the hearing. Senator Serafini chaired something called the STAR Commission. I was on there with Delegate Corman. This is something of an outgrowth of one of the recommendations that came from that commission. But that said, it's a different bill. Yeah, but that's fine. So let's hold 161 for you to check exactly why Harford County is where they are. Okay, let's go down to House Bill 463. Alexis, that's back to you.
House Bill 463, State Board of Architects Sunset Extension. The interesting thing about this bill, it is not cross-filed. However, we passed out a bill on the same topic with the same title doing very similar things under SB 713, if I recall correctly. And this bill, as it comes to us from the House, amends the State Board of Architects to 10 years. And if you recall, on our non-cross filed bill, we amended it to 5. So to create parity, I think we should have a conversation of 5 or 10.
Okay, well, that was Senator Kagan's 10 to 5 idea. So Senator Kagan, you want to?
Yep. Sponsor the House bill, Delegate Johnson, and he is okay with 5. So I would move that we conform the House bill to the Senate.
Okay, any discussion on that? Well, we would have to, amend this to take it back to the 5 is basically. Okay, we have a motion, a second. Okay, again, just so everybody's clear, we would take this back from 10 to 5, the way we passed it out, and apparently sponsor in the House will be okay with that when we send it back. So that's the motion to amend it to go 10 to 5. And we have a motion second. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, is there any opposition? Okay, that carries unanimously. Got the bill as amended, 463 as amended before us. Is there a motion?
Move favorable.
Senator Kagan, second for Senator Augustine. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, that carries unanimously. That's House Bill 463. Let's go next to House Bill 492.
House Bill 492, Anne Arundel County School Vehicles Duration of Operation. This bill allows a school vehicle to be operated for 15 years rather than 12 years in Anne Arundel County. There are no amendments, and we have a local letter.
Okay, does the Anne Arundel County Senator have a motion? Okay,
Second.
favorable, second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of House Bill 492, favorable, clean. All opposed, that carries unanimously. Next up, House Bill 516, Delegate Love. April.
House Bill 516, Agriculture Use of Antimicrobial Drugs Reporting Deadlines. This bill moves the date from February 1st to July 1st, by which the Department of Agriculture must submit a report to the General Assembly each year on data collected on the use in the state of medically important antimicrobial drugs in cattle, swine, and poultry. Again, this was not a cross-filed bill. Had the bill hearing last week. There are no amendments.
Move favorable.
Okay, we have a motion favorable, second from Senator Washington. Any discussion on House Bill 516? Yes, Senator Carozza.
If I could ask our resident farmer, just, I don't know much about this bill and the reporting deadline. Do you have any sense of why we need a bill for this, or?
I haven't really dug in it too much, but MDA's favorable and there's been no alerts or anything from Farm Bureau, so
It passed unanimously in the House.
unanimous in the House, so I think we're good.
It's the problem is right now in statute, it says that they have to report this information by February 1st. They've been finding that the way it works out with how the vets collect this information, it's too quick of a turnaround. So that they just ask to push it back to July 1st.
Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? House Bill 516 carries unanimously. Next up, House Bill 525.
House Bill 525, Outdoor Preschool License Pilot Program Establishment. This bill establishes an outdoor preschool license pilot program administered by the Maryland State Department of Education. The purpose of the pilot program is to license outdoor nature-based early learning and child care programs. The pilot program must begin by August 31st, 2024, and continue for 4 school years. Generally, the department must select between 5 and 10 program participants in the first year. They must also convene an advisory group to inform and support implementation of the program and submit specified reports. They must also adopt rules and regulations for the licensure and operation of outdoor nature-based early learning and childcare programs as specified. The bill takes effect July 1, 2023 and terminates on June 30th, 2028. There are no amendments.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the table at HB 525. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of House Bill 525? Raise your hand. All opposed? That bill carries unanimously. Next up, House Bill 573. And that's Stacy.
So House Bill 573 is the Maryland Higher Education Commission Access to Mental Health Advisory Committee establishment. You heard this bill yesterday. The question before you was to accept the House amendment to add 3 student members to the advisory committee.
Okay, Senator Kagan, motion, Senator Washington, second. Discussion. Is there discussion?
Can we just move this to the end?
Sure. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, but we're gonna take HB 573. I'm gonna move it to the end of our calendar today. HB 706 is next up, and that is Alexis.
House Bill 706, Community Development Sustainable Communities Business Facade Improvement Program. This bill establishes within the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Business Facade Improvement Program, to allow counties as well as municipalities to apply for funds for the later distribution in the form of grants to qualified businesses. The sole purpose of these grants to the businesses through the counties and municipalities will be to improve the facades of the businesses. The bill requires a mandated appropriation of $5 million beginning in fiscal year 2025 and each year after. There are no amendments and there wasn't any written opposition.
Okay, is B&T signed off?
B&T is second.
Okay,
Thanks. So B&T will review the cost to the bill.
yeah,
Yeah,
Included,
that's right.
okay.
MML wanted municipalities, and so that's included in the definition of political subdivision.
okay, further discussion about this bill. We're on House Bill 706. Okay, there are no amendments. No, we move it and then we can send it to B&T. It doesn't go to the floor. And if you recall, by the way, just somebody, if you asked me about the clean transportation bill, same thing, like we passed it out here, but you didn't see on the floor because it has to go to B&T. So in any event, back on 706, any discussion? Okay, do we have a motion? Okay, Senator Brooks, is there a second? Senator Carrozza, okay, all in favor of House Bill 706, clean, no amendments, raise your hand. All opposed, bill carries unanimously. Let's go to the back here. First of all, we left on the Maryland Holocaust Remembrance Day. I did talk to Senator Kramer. He's okay with the House amendment that struck one of the preamble provisions. So I think would be aligned. We're talking specifically House Bill 1244. And so I would move that we take those. Yeah, well, it's just straight up, right? So it's just would be clean. Yes, there's motion. Second from Senator Lewis Young. Again, we're on House Bill 1244, and this will align the House and Senate bills. All in favor? Okay, all opposed. House Bill 1244 carries. Let's go up to Delegate Barnes. Let's see, I'm sorry. Let's go back. Let's go up one to House Bill 923, Delegate B. Barnes. Stacy.
House Bill 923, and you'll also see on voting list 26, Senate Bill 662. These are cross-file bills. This is higher education, appointment of secretary and student financial assistance, accommodations at public institutions for religious belief. This bill alters the selection process for the Secretary of Higher Education. It also alters the eligibility requirements for the Guaranteed Access Grant component of the Delegate Howard P. Rawling Educational Excellence Awards Program and requires institutions of higher education, rather than the Maryland Higher Education Commission, Office of Student Financial Assistance, to notify award recipients beginning July 1, 2025. The bill also changes the eligibility requirements for the Maryland Community College Promise Scholarship and requires community colleges in the state, not the Office of Financial Assistance, to select scholarship recipients and verify recipient eligibility. Finally, the bill requires each public institution of higher education to adopt a policy as specified to accommodate students' faith-based or religious practices and provide a space on campus for such practices. The bill generally takes effect July 1, 2023. However, provisions transferring the guaranteed access grant notification take effect on July 1, 2025. On page 18, 19, and 20 of your packet, you will see one amendment from Senator Feldman. And essentially, the original bill as it came in just took out any age eligibility requirements or having to apply within a specified period of time. And this brings it back just a little bit where it alters the eligibility criteria for the guaranteed access grants to require an individual to apply within 6 years of graduation from high school versus the 1 year that is in current law, and requires an individual to be under the age of 26 years old on initial application only. So they can still re-up their scholarship or award when they're 26 or over. This is just initial application. So there's also, I didn't include them because the amendments to the cross-file Senate bill just conform it to the House bill, and they would include that amendment from House Bill 923.
Okay, discussion. Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stacy, I'm just looking at the favorable with amendments and University of Maryland, and now I'm in MHEC. Have we considered some of these?
I will say there have been extensive discussions on this bill with all of the stakeholders, and the final product reflects most of what everybody agreed to. Not everybody likes everything in the bill, and that was the product that was agreed to is in front of you.
Again, this is probably as close a consensus as you're going to get on a bill like this based on all the various stakeholders. So, with that said, additional questions for Stacy? Okay. Well, that said, what's that? Well, somebody want to move the amendments? You want to move the amendment? Senator Gallion, is there a second? Okay, Senator Lewis Young. Okay, any discussion about the amendments? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed, those amendments carry unanimously. And why don't do we have to do a separate vote for the two bill, or are they part?
I would do a separate vote.
Yeah, okay, well, right now we're again on just the House bill. And then later next we can take up 662 separate, sort of align them. But again, on House bill, yes, Senator Washington.
A question. On page 8 of the bill, where it talks about if a community college does not award all the funding allocated to the community college, they will distribute the remaining funding to another community college. Is there a timeline or is there a date? And are they writing a check? Yeah, that section, I don't understand how that would work. Was there? And I must have missed the hearing because I would have asked that.
Again, so the Promise Scholarship, as you're aware, encompasses a lot of different students. And part of the issue had been with the Office of Financial Assistance is that not only did it include degree students, but non-degree students, and their timeline for applying for participation or getting into programs is quite different. And so a lot of money was being left on the table. So the thinking here is that the institutions themselves were in the best place to make these decisions about who could qualify and get money, and having some money available to them to make it work. So the institutions, and that includes all the community colleges, had agreed to this particular language, and it is their assertion that they can make this work, that they can get it to the right students, and that if they have any leftovers, they can get it to other institutions that have more eligible students, but not enough money.
So is there a date somewhere else in the code when I just don't know at what point is it deemed that the funds aren't being used?
There is not a particular date because this is new. And so a lot of this would be working it out in the first or second year and seeing how this all rolls together.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, additional questions, Senator Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the House third reader version, and Stacy, maybe you can tell me whether our proposed amendments cover this. page 11, lines 18 and 19, enrolls in, the bill came in as 12 credits per semester, and it was modified to 6, which is basically 2 classes, which is super part-time. Is there going to be a reduced level of scholarship eligibility for a part-time load than there would be? 12 is closer to a full-time load.
Right. So again, this is for community college.
Yeah.
This is not for the 4 years. So as this part of the deal was to open this up to give part-time students the money because this money is not being used. The point of this is to expand the program and bring more students in. And if you have students who are part-time and they get this funding and then they can see that they can handle this, they can move into a full-time and continue with their scholarship and get some additional fund.
Further down on page 13, it goes back to 12. So it's got 12 and 6. All eligible students, at least 12 credits on lines 24 through 26.
Which page are you on?
What did I just say? Page 13,
13.
lines 24 through 28. So it goes back, bless you, goes back to 12 credits. And then if there are funds that are left over, students who are enrolled in at least 6 credits.
Right. So that's a priority list.
Okay,
We're not saying that the priority is students who are full-time, but
okay.
it's opening up to students who are part-time.
And we're not amending that?
No.
So still priority for our full-time students?
Correct.
Good with that. Thank you.
Okay, additional questions? Okay, do we have a motion on this? We had, the amendments were carried, so now we're again on House Bill 923. Was there a motion?
Favorable.
Okay, favorable from Senator Kagan. Is there a second? Senator Lewis Young. Okay, any discussion again on House Bill 923 with these amendments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? That bill carries unanimously. House Bill 923. Let's shift over to 662. Same cross file. So we have a separate set of amendments that'll conform the 2 bills together.
Correct. I didn't
Right.
include them because they were
Yeah.
longer, but they
Right.
do. They conform the bills, including that amendment you just voted on for the House
Right.
version.
So, okay, so we've got Senate Bill 662, the cross file. Any further discussion? You would like to move those amendments so we get these 2 bills together. Senator Gallion moves the amendments, or second. Senator Brooks, all in favor of those conforming amendments, raise your hand. Okay, all opposed, they carry unanimously. Bill 662 as amended is before us. Is there a motion? Senator Kagan,
Second.
favorable. Second, Senator Gallion, discussion. All in favor? Bill 662 as amended, raise your hand. All opposed, that bill carries unanimously. Since we're back on the Senate list a little bit here, let's go up to Senator McCrae's bill. We kind of left that off yesterday with some questions. So April, and we did get some big report. I don't know if everybody got it in their email, but giving us some more information about this. I think Senator Augustine asked some questions. So April, let's try to fill in some gaps and go back to Senate Bill 392 here.
Okay. Just so as a reminder, the Senate Bill 392 wastewater facility supplemental operations and maintenance grant program establishment. This bill establishes the wastewater facility supplemental operations and maintenance grant program administered by the Maryland Water Infrastructure Financing Administration and the Department of the Environment. Again, the intent of this grant program would be to provide grants to wastewater treatment facilities to cover costs related to operations and maintenance that to address challenges that threaten the proper functioning of facilities, or enhanced nutrient removal technology, although the amendments being offered by Senator McCrae would take that out and just say the ability to the facility to discharge clean water and meet applicable federal, state, and local laws. So there are 2 amendments being offered by Senator McCrae. One replaces the mandatory $10 million appropriation for the grant program with a discretionary appropriation. And then the other strikes references to the proper functioning of enhanced nutrient removal technology. And instead, as I previously specified, talks about the ability to discharge clean water and meet applicable state and local laws. Also strikes reference to competitive grant product process, specifies the Department of the Environment should prioritize facilities that have high vacancy rates during a specified time period, and facilities that serve a high proportion of users in overburdened and underserved communities. Finally, those amendments will prohibit the facility from being awarded more than $6 million in grants under the bill during a 3-year period. So the follow-up that I sent around earlier, just there were questions yesterday. So one of the provisions in the bill calls for the prioritization of plants that handle more than 1 million, or that have a design capacity of 1 million gallons per day or more. So as that chart in the document that I sent shows, that's probably a majority of facilities in the state are sort of at that larger capacity. And I think each county except for Kent County has at least one that is 1 million gallons per day or more. Also in that report, it talked a little bit about there is already an operations and maintenance grant program that is funded through the Bay Restoration Fund. But again, that grant program it's partly performance-based. So the wastewater treatment plants that are doing a better job of cleaning the water actually get more funding. So the purpose of Senate Bill 392 would sort of be to do the opposite, to address those wastewater treatment facilities that are having issues that are affecting their ability to even meet the sort of baseline standards.
Okay, so we left it yesterday. There were some questions. Okay, start with Senator Simon Ayer.
And thank you for that chart, which basically went to G2 with the size of it. How many facilities in that chart meet this criteria?
I have no way of knowing off the top of my head. I mean, the overburdened and underserved, that's a pretty broad category, and probably a number of places throughout the state would meet that. In terms of the 10% or more vacancy rate, I couldn't speak to it directly, except to say that that has been a challenge for all wastewater treatment plants in Maryland, particularly during that time period. That was post-pandemic when all of the plants were struggling to find operators.
Okay, it just seems very tailored to single out one or two. I mean, that's the way it seems it's crafted, and it'd be nice to know if I have a facility in my district, would mine qualify, Cox Creek? Or is this just, trying to get one facility without saying their name in the bill? And that's my concern. I think I have a concern about that, so I probably won't support this.
Okay, Senator Augustine, you had some questions yesterday on
I did, and a lot of them were answered. And just to respond to Senator Simon there, I would think that would be the case if the number had been way higher. I mean, the fact that it is 1 million actually covers a much broader spectrum of the folks. Let's say if it had put 100 million, then you only would have 2 or 3 that could actually access the funds. I think it actually is broader than that, and I think it is a pretty significant problem across the board where folks are struggling with the water professionals and stuff like that. So I think it's actually a little bit more open and not as kind of tightly tailored by virtue of the requirements that are there.
Senator Hester.
I'm sorry, I probably should have asked this question yesterday. I was just looking at on page 6 of the reprint, 2 of the bill, where they strike the enhanced nutrient removal. Are you striking existing law there? And does that impact any other portion of the code besides this?
So all of that is doing is it's taking it out of the bill because they struck another portion of the bill. So that was a reference to existing law. They're not repealing the existing law.
Okay, additional questions on this bill? Yeah, yes, Senator Simon Ayer.
And I thank you for your clarification. I mean, that addressed one of the 3 qualifications. For the third one, it says a high proportion of users. What what defines a high proportion? Is that 30%, 70%? When you're comparing facilities, if one district has 50% and the other one has 65, you just take the greater, or is there and how do these play? Well, I guess that's the only subjective one. The other two are very concrete. You either had 10% or you didn't, however that, this one's more subjective. So are what they saying is the highest proportion gets prioritized?
It doesn't say that. I mean, ultimately, it would be up to the Department of the Environment to sort of figure out how they're applying these criteria, but it doesn't say you have to take the highest. It just says, again, it's fairly soft language directing the Department of the Environment to prioritize these factors when they're distributing the grant money.
And then if I could, when it says who live in overburdened or underserved communities, what relative to what? I mean, is that to water? Is that to education? How do you qualify that?
Yeah, and I would suggest potentially if the committee wants to move forward with that amendment, just adding in the cross-reference. That's the language that's being used increasingly to target environmental justice communities. So those are defined terms in another portion of the environment article. So underserved communities is defined in reference to income levels for census tracts. Overburdened communities is defined to be communities that are in the 75th percentile or higher for certain exposure to certain toxins and pollutants.
Well, I mean, for one, it's not defined here, so I think you would have to define it.
I think the cross-reference, yeah,
Right.
and I think that was the intent. I think they just, for whatever reason, and drafting the amendments didn't do that.
Okay, well, since we just went to that point, any discussion on the idea of cross-referencing another section of the code that does define it more tightly so as to avoid any ambiguity or subjectivity on that term? Is there any dissenting point of view on that one? Because I think actually that makes sense. So I think that's a good catch on your part.
Can I just follow up on one
Sure.
more thing?
Yeah.
So on the first point, it says an overall staff vacancy rate or a maintenance division staff of 10%. What is the difference? I understand the overall. What is the scope of a maintenance division? I mean, could that be 7 people or is that 500 people? I mean,
I don't know.
so if you go to a facility and they have 7 people maintenance, one person's out, they qualify?
I just don't know.
You know, again, some of this, I think, as April said, it's the department's going to have to, these are guidelines and some criteria for the department, but you know, it's not being too prescriptive, but you know, obviously you highlighted some issues, you know, that you
I mean,
think
I
are-
would say it's prescriptive because
Yeah.
it says a maintenance division staff, which seems very particular, which I don't know what a maintenance staff is. So it doesn't say they just have an overall rate of 10%. They say that or the specific maintenance staff, which could be a very small. I just think when you throw terms in the law, we should know what they mean.
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, April, do you have any on term maintenance? I mean, you know, not everything gets a cross reference. You did have, okay, we had a motion second on the cross reference idea amendment. So let's formally, at least that particular idea makes sense.
That's the overburdened and underserved is in the amendment. So page 8 of the
Senator Crow's page 8 of the
voting packet.
voted pack.
Right, and the staff vacancy, so that's in the bill, but you can see it on page 8, lines 21 through 22.
Okay, well, all in favor of the amendment to cross-reference this other term that per Senator Simoneau's point, all in favor of that? You know, as far as, okay, that amendment carries. As far as defining things like maintenance. I mean, some of this we can't redefine every word in every bill, and but it's a fair point, but yeah, Senator Washington.
So the point is, I would have been able to answer this a week ago, but it looks like, and again, it's not just one facility, but you could have an overall vacancy rate that could be 7 or 8%, but you could have a vacancy rate in a critical division, like electrical division or service division, that really makes the operation of the plant more problematic. So I believe that's why that's in there, that you might have all your accountants or whatever, but you don't have the folks that are cleaning out the pipes, or who are engineers, or who are doing very specific tasks that are needed. So I think that's why that flexibility was in there, and it makes sense to me. Like I said, it wouldn't have a week ago, but now I see that there are certain sort of departmental level vacancies that are causing some of the problems we're having in some of our plants.
Okay, additional, Senator Carozza.
Thank you. And April, thank you for all the follow-up on this, and just trying to bottom line this. It seems to me from the information you shared with us, which showed all the different programs where our wastewater treatment plants could be benefiting across the board. And I think what you summarized, that some of these awards are based on, I guess, good cleanup brings more funds. This, and that's referencing mainly this report. And then by looking at SB 392, this bill is more geared to those wastewater treatment facilities that are in need of more cleanup funds. Is that, I mean, as far as like, when you look at the purpose of this grant program, is that fair to say?
Yeah, not necessarily cleanup funds, but funds to fill gaps in maintenance and
Yeah, okay,
operations,
maintenance.
and particularly the operating cost that are where, if there are shortfalls, that it's affecting their ability to perform sort of their basic functions.
So, and I think where the questions are coming from, like if I take a district like mine, which has, I range from, the Salisbury, Ocean City to, Smith Island. So trying to figure out, and this was helpful just to see what they're already receiving, but for purposes of this bill, trying to figure out of, my 3 counties, 11 municipalities, how many could possibly benefit. And especially if you have and when you do use the term underserved, I'm thinking from the standpoint, okay, does that include Crisfield? Does that include Pocomoke? So I think that's why we're grappling to really try to understand, because I want to support a program that's going to help those facilities that need this, need these funds, given the overall goals. But I'm also trying to figure out who in that pool would actually benefit, what that range might look like. So that's why I'm struggling with trying to understand that part of it.
Okay, additional questions? Yes, Senator Sumner.
I haven't been talking much this session, so. And this will be my last question point. First, let me ask a question to April. Is this an ongoing grant, or is this just a 1-year grant program?
So the way,
Assuming it's funded.
right, the way it is structured, I believe it allows for multi-year grants if desired.
Okay, so my question is, in the first statement, it says you have a 10% or more vacancy, but it has a look back 3 years and only to October of this year. So if I have a shortage in 2024, I can't apply for this grant, or I'm not prioritized. And also, if you have no shortage in 2024, but you met this you can qualify for it. So I'm trying to understand the window, other than trying to get one facility.
No, the reason they put they proposed the window in the amendments was based off of some pushback they got initially that if you didn't have some sort of window, it would somehow incentivize plants to not be filling staff positions. So that was the concern. I understand your concern about that sort of narrowness of that window, but that was what they were trying to get at.
Okay, let's get all the other, any other questions get out on the table? Okay, we have amendments. Does anyone want to move the amendments? Motion to move amendments. Senator Washington, is there a second? Senator Augustine? Okay, discussion of these on these amendments. Why don't we, this one has a little pushback. Why don't we do a roll call on this and then the underlying bill? So
Can we just clarify, are
Sure.
we taking both sets of amendments together,
Oh.
the shall to the may and everything else?
yes, unless somebody wants to decouple or segregate, if you want to pull that out, say now, otherwise we're going to lump them all together into one vote. Okay. Okay, we're going to lump it all into one vote. And we are going to do a roll call on these amendments.
All right, Senator Kagan,
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes, Senator Augustine,
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes, Senator Gallion,
Yes.
Senator Gallion, yes, Senator Watson.
Yes.
Senator Watson, yes, Senator Louis Young. Senator Louis Young, yes, Senator Brooks,
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes, Senator Carrizo,
Yes.
Senator Carrizo, yes, Senator Hester. Senator Hester, yes, Senator Washington,
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes, Senator Simonair. Senator Simonair, no, Senator Feldman.
Yes, amendments carry 10-1. Bill as amended is front of us, Senate Bill 392. Senator Washington has a motion favorable. Is there a second from Senator Augustine? Let's do another roll call and then we'll move on to next bill. So again, Senate Bill 392 as amended, and we're going to do a roll call.
All right, Senator Kagan.
Aye.
Senator Kagan, yes. Senator Augustine.
Yes.
Senator Augustine, yes. Senator Gallion.
Yes.
Senator Gallion, yes. Senator Watson. Senator Watson, yes. Senator Louis Young. Senator Louis Young, yes. Senator Brooks.
Yes.
Senator Brooks, yes. Senator Carrizo.
Yes.
Senator Carrizo, yes. Senator Hester.
Yes.
Senator Hester, yes. Senator Washington.
Yes.
Senator Washington, yes. Senator Simonair. Senator Simonair, no. Senator Feldman.
Yes, bill carries 10-1. Okay, so again, we held House Bill 161. Senator Augustine, let's just roll this to tomorrow on House Bill 573 or the next voting session. We'll just, we're not going to, yeah, no, that's fine. So that, which leaves us with two other bills, both are cross-filed. So on the bill that we started conversation yesterday on electric vehicle charging, Senate Bill 477, and then the cross-file is House Bill 830. I'm trying to duplicate the efforts of Senator Elfrith and trying to get to a compromise position. See Bob Ed with the NAOP builders. And I'd like at least another day to try to pull that off. And if I can, I'll report back to you tomorrow. So let's hold that bill for one day, which leaves us with one final bill for today, which is Senator Brooks and Delegate Clippinger's cross-file bill on community solar. So with that, Alexis, we're going to, yes, we're going to go back to you to explain again 908 on the House side, and then again at 613 on the Senate side. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Alexis.
All right, so I'll start with the packet, kind of frame where we are. This bill essentially makes permanent the Community Solar Energy Generating Systems Pilot Program within the Public Service Commission. Regulations are required to be adopted for the implementation of the program by October 1st of 2024. It makes several requirements on co-location, low to moderate income, subscriptions, billing procedures, low income attestation, et cetera. So we have a couple of documents. The first has House Bill 901 prominently displayed. It has a number on the bottom. That should be the thickest packet. And so that's going to be the one that you want to refer to. And then we have an individual amendment that is sponsored by Senator Brooks, has SB 613. And it says loose, single, not included in the packet. That's right. I want to put that on the top, the side, something like that. And then we have a chart that also is not included in the packet. That's it. That's right. So it may be helpful to walk through the House as amended because Senator Brooks has a conforming amendment. So if we adopt Senator Brooks's amendments, which are incorporated in this packet with the numbers on it, on pages 21 through 27, we see the conforming amendments to the House version. So it makes more sense to talk through the House version.
Yeah, let's just work through the House amendments,
Okay.
and if we get to a place, the Brooks amendments would simply conform. So let's just work off of House Bill 908 Delegate Clippinger's bill.
Okay, sounds good. So from the chart, and there are page numbers for reference. So beginning at the sort of first box here, the amendment sent to us from the House delay the program implementation from October 1, 2024 to January 1, 2025. And it requires amendments or regulations, to be proffered by that date to correspond to the delay of the program being implemented. That's on page 11, line 29, yes. That's okay. Yep, so it's the actual House. That's right. And so it's, I should clarify, it's the actual House bill, but it has some other goodies in here too. It has a couple of amendments and then it has a little primer. Right. That's right, right. It's a separate packet. And then we have a chart. That's right. And then we have the amendment. That's right, exactly. Sure, okay, so in general, the bill establishes the Community Solar Energy Generating Systems Pilot Program. It authorizes a utility company to adopt consolidated billing for community solar subscribers, which is a combination of subscription charges, electricity charges, and bill credits together. It authorizes a low-income customer to self-verify their low to moderate income status. It requires 40% of projects in the permanent program to be designated to low to moderate income individuals. It removes capacity limits that were in place under the pilot program for the amount of capacity and energy that each of these projects could hold. It places intent language that suggests that the Public Service Commission is required to hire an additional individual for the sole purpose of overseeing the community solar pilot program. Places a fee cap on consolidated billing fees that an electric company provides to organizations that enroll customers in community solar projects. And so that is the gist. The House amendment walkthrough is on this separate chart, which will go into a little more detail. So on the second, stopped at the second and stop me whenever necessary. The second bullet deals with this maximum capacity of these projects. So under the bill, and this is the second one that says modifies the definition of agrivoltaics. So under the bill, a project cannot be beside an additional project if the cumulative capacity or energy that is generated is more than 5 megawatts. So the definition of agrivoltaics has been changed. And that's on page 7, actually maybe on page 6. I think that was an error on the document, sorry. On page 2, line 24. Through line 3, through page 3, line 7. Probably say that better. Page 2, lines 24 through 34. Then it continues on to page 3, lines 1 through 7. So this specifies the type of farming practices that are included within the definition of agrivoltaics. And this is important because there is a carve out within the bill saying that particular projects that are beside each other, if they have a capacity that exceeds 5 megawatts, it's fine if they are for the sole purpose of agrivoltaics. So this is bought from the House. This was vetted by the Farm Bureau, and that is the import of that. Yes.
Had mentioned when you talked about the capacity, 5 megawatts, and you said beside. And I thought I saw in the bill, it talked about a parcel, and you can't have it on another part. What was the distance between two projects, the minimum distance?
So it mentions a lot, right? So let's pull. I think the particular language says it's in the same lot. So this is page 8, lines 16 through 22.
16.
Yeah, so it's saying that if it's on a parcel of land. So parcel isn't necessarily defined, but I'm just envisioning like a plot of land with a deed attached to it. If there is a project there that is exceeding the 5 megawatt capacity on this parcel, this lot of land, there can't be another beside it on that same parcel or plot of land.
So you're basing it on ownership? So in other words, if I have 10 acres on one property and my next door neighbor has 10 acres, can we both have community solar? And if that's true, then one person who has 20 acres cannot do that, right?
So it would be, as it's drafted, it looks like it would be who has the title or the deed to it. Because it says if there's an owner that has a project on that parcel of land. So my interpretation is the parcel of land has to be deeded to someone. Now
It could be adjacent then, as long as they're two different owners of each separate parcel, right?
let me reread that section one more time. I think that's a good question.
Yesterday, I've kind of been somewhat reluctant to, yesterday I had, about Cress and Etten, different, sometimes we have some folks in the audience that can understand there's some, advocacy here. I just put disclaimer, but we do have gentleman right behind Alexis that, works in this space. So might be helpful. Just, if you don't mind, just, some of these questions might, since you work in this space, maybe you have an answer because I know you're involved with the bill, but understanding he's coming from an advocacy standpoint, but here, just, if you, Sarah Watson's point. Yeah. Yeah, okay, just if you can answer it, if you can't, that's fine. I just want, if we have somebody in the audience, like take advantage of it.
Yep. Thank you, Chair Feldman. My name is Charlie Cogshaw. I'm the Mid-Atlantic Director for Coalition for Community Solar Access. I'm familiar with the language and also the amendments that are in HB 908, which are part of this kind of amendment batch. So the ownership doesn't matter. The co-location is two projects that are either on the same parcel or on adjacent parcels. The primary difference is they have to have different interconnection points. They can't just be a 10 megawatt project with one interconnection point. These are two interconnected projects. But there's not an issue with ownership, and there's not an issue with kind of the proximity they have with each other, other than they can be kind of next to each other. Yeah.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay, back to you, Alexis.
Okay, so this is the third sort of box here. So on page 14 of the bill on line 11, this is where we start delaying regulations and procedures. So it delays the date by which the Public Service Commission has to adopt billing related and specific consolidated billing related regulations by 2 months from April 2025 to July 2025. And then there are even more specific consolidated billing procedures that are delayed from April 1st, 2025 to January 1st, 2026. And that's found on page 14, line 13. And so that provision on page 14, line 13 delays the date for an electric company to come up with a protocol for consolidated billing, which is broadened under the bill to include 2 particular and very specific types of billing. Purchase of receivables being one, and net crediting is a term of art used in New York, but that's another option. Do you have questions on those? I know a bit, but I may sort of outsource that to some of our experts here.
Can I just, because again, I just want the committee to get comfortable. Just the term consolidated billing may not be a term everybody's familiar with. So maybe just for the benefit of the committee, when we use that phrase, if you could just, I think for the benefit.
Overview. Okay. Right, exactly. So there is a good primer on the back, but essentially, and that's on, I think it's on page 29. That sort of explains it.
Yeah, just again, look at page 29 of the packet. It's just, I think, I actually had forgot about this document. So
Okay.
it does give a bit of an overview,
Mhm.
So why don't you take a look at everybody could take a look at that document. So why don't we move on and people can look at this and then maybe have some questions about what that means. Okay, why don't you just continue?
Sounds good. That next prong on page 4, lines 4 through 6. So it creates a carve out to that 40%.
Yes.
I was reading this overview and I was with you until you got into these 2 models.
Okay.
Somebody needs to explain the 2 models to
Okay.
me.
Okay, sounds good. And I'll just say for consolidated billing, instead of getting a separate bill with the charges from the actual community solar subscriber, company.
Alexis, just put Mike a little closer. Yeah.
So the gist of it is making sure, well, the overview of consolidated billing is combining the bills into one. So instead of getting a separate one from the electric company and the subscribing organization, that'll be incorporated into one bill. Under this bill, the electric company has to come up with a procedure to allocate those bill credits deducted from their calculation of the electric bill. You kind of come up with the bill that way.
So they're just
in
saying these
one
are the 2
bill.
ways you can do the consolidated bill.
Net crediting and purchase of receivables are the two ways that can be done. And those are both options under the bill. But if there was more specificity on how those 2 operate, I am not the person for that.
Well, I think again, it's one, we're putting everything in one bill, and with the credits and the puts and the takes, it's all in one place instead of you get a separate bill, so et cetera. Okay, back to you, Alexis.
So on page 10. Lines 1 through 7. Make sure I got that right. Let's see. Yeah, 1 through 7 or 5 through 7. So there was a cap in the original bill on the fees for consolidated billing that an electric company could charge a subscriber organization and, eventually a customer for participating in community solar. And that cap was set at 1%, right? So there was a 1% fee in order to recover the cost for implementing these programs or these projects. Now there is an exception to that. The electric companies are allowed to charge more than 1%, a 1% fee on bills, so long as, here's the standard, the higher fee is, quote, just and reasonable and is based on substantial evidence. So there is a carve out for the utility companies and testimony and floor system. A lot of the utilities, if not most, I'll say a lot of the utilities that chimed in were a little uncomfortable with consolidated billing. So, and the cap on the fees because they felt like they should be able to recover costs. So there is a minor carve out there. On page 16, lines 33 through page 17, line 6. This is another billing provision that, and this will pair well with page 30, which talks about the calculation of bill credits. So if you want to put like a little pin on page 30 as well as page 16. This provision establishes that a subscriber organization or subscriber coordinator is not allowed to charge residential subscribers who subscribe to community solar a subscription rate that is more than the value of the credit that they're getting for being a part of the program. And that provision is going to apply regardless of whether the customer opts into consolidated billing or not. There's language that says the subscription charge, the rate that these organizations who enroll folks in these community solar projects cannot charge a rate higher than what the value that the customer is receiving. Page 12, line 11 through page 13. Line 15 authorizes an organization that enrolls folks in community solar projects instead of the customer themselves to verify their low income status. And that can be through a variety of methods to include self-verification of low to moderate status or proof of pay stubs, tax documents, or participation in government assistance programs. So under the original Senate version as drafted, put the onus on the customer to do this, and the customer would still be able to verify individually their low to moderate income status, but it shifts the burden in other areas to the individual signing them up to verify their eligibility. Page 17, line 7 through 29, require developers who are involved in community solar projects to meet prevailing wage requirements if the project is over 1 megawatt. There is a carve out for meeting the prevailing wage requirements if there is a valid, in detail, exhaustive labor agreement. Page 17, lines 31 through page 19 on through line 19 on page 19 is wholly technical. It is on request from Ways and Means to consolidate and update a lot of legislation that was passed last year on personal property tax exemptions for community solar generating systems. So that is not a policy question, but is a technical ask from the House. Right, so that takes care of the majority of the sponsor amendments. Now the separate, I'll pause.
That's good. Again, this is like we've done with several other bills. I like for some of these bills, it's important to get all the questions on the table and try to get answers and, we'll get to a place before we would take a vote. Senator Augustine.
Thank you. Given all of these changes and everything else, I'm surprised we are not having a hearing on this.
Good.
We had that bill, but this is different, it seems. So there hasn't been like a public conversation about.
I mean, we had
all of this.
the Brooks. I mean, Brooks has the crossfile. So yes, there was a hearing. The bill has obviously been amended.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. No, it's fair.
I guess what I'm
Yeah.
asking
Yeah.
then is because there was a lot of, back and forth, unfavorable and stuff
Right.
like that. What is the position of the PSC right now? What is the position of the utilities right now, given the fact that we have not had a chance for them? We're not hearing how they've weighed in on this.
Okay, I think that's totally legit. As I said just earlier when we had Chair Atterbury in here, for the most part, we haven't done hearings for the crossfires unless there was substantial change. In the case of today with Chair Atterbury, she had changed the bill very significantly, and we did have a hearing. You know, these are, you know, significant amendments, and, you know, knowing where the stakeholders' positions are is legit. So with that said, Senator Augustine, I think maybe what I'm going to propose, kind of like I did with Senator McCray yesterday's bill, let's get everything out on the table. You've put that out, and we're going to do some more voting tomorrow. And by the time we come back, it'll be the same thing. We'll get, you know, we'll find out exactly where everybody is, so everybody knows. You know, I think there was a reference to the Farm Bureau or some, I mean, whatever. Let's just do everything professionally here. And so right now, let's get everything out. So that duly noted, Senator Gallion.
Thank you. I looked through appreciate the amendments regarding Farm Bureau. I mean, it's like word for word from there, favorable with amendment testimony. I guess one question that I'd like to figure out is, it seemed like the power companies, one of their main things was issues with making the billing work. They're saying it's unworkable. So I didn't know, we talked about the cap, but I didn't know if they are now good with the billing aspect too. So that'd be just one question I'd kind of like to know, to see if this is something they still feel is not really that workable.
Yeah, I'm sure Alexis can weigh in. I'm sure that generally, because we've had this on some other bills, they'll say that the IT costs are, you know, or something they'll have to bear. But I think they may have quantified it or to some extent, but there's some quantification involved. But I don't think it's a significant amount, but I don't want to speak for them entirely. I mean, they probably would raise that issue as they do on other issues. There's IT costs involved, et cetera. But that said, Alexis, maybe you have some input on that. I don't
Right.
know. Yeah.
Contributions are similar in their testimony. And they talked a lot about ranges from 5 million to 20 million to implement the consolidated piece. And, you know, furthermore, not being able to recover those costs for consolidated billing because of the 1% cap. So it sounds like the compromise in the House was to delay the length of time that the electric companies had to come up with steps and procedures for consolidated billing, but it didn't erase the requirement for them to have it. So they'll still have to do it. They have more time to come up with it. And there's a possibility that they can kind of weave their way out of that 1% cap to recover some of the amount that it costs them to do it. But I haven't seen any testimony saying that they are in full support. I don't think they would make that claim.
Okay, Senator Hester, and then we'll go to, okay, Senator Hester, and then we'll go to, or do you have a question? And then Senator Brooks, who's the crossfire bill.
So I wanted to ask about the solar siting, because I understand that there was amendment and the amendment is now no longer in the bill around class 1 and class 2 soils.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions, because I've got a lot of, you know, agricultural land in my district, the question I get asked a lot is both about like how this relates to farm pres and solar siting. And so I'm just curious if there's going to be a work group over the interim that's like working on this, or if we could suggest that maybe that there would be
A work group on actual solar siting particularly.
yes, and as it relates to agriculture.
So I definitely haven't seen legislation this year on a work group for solar siting.
Okay, actually, on that issue, we do have, I know Kristen Harbison in the back has actually been involved with that very topic. Kristen, since again, we've got some folks who can answer some of these questions, I'd like to take advantage of. Kristen, just on this issue of solar siting.
Of course, Senator Hester, Kristen Harbison, Political Director for Maryland League of Conservation Voters. I actually spoke with Colby Ferguson after the House hearing when they presented their 2 amendments. In the House, there were actually 2 amendments. In the Senate, when he came across in the Senate, there was only the 1. We'd worked with him in the interim. We agreed that this bill is not the place to address the much more comprehensive, complicated issue around solar siting. That is an issue that needs to be taken up. In the interim, we've committed to working with the Farm Bureau and other stakeholders to address that issue. So it is part of the conversation. The Farm Bureau, with the amendments around the definitions, are okay with this bill, my understanding. And you're welcome to confirm with Colby. We've had extensive conversations about this.
Senator Hester.
No, I really appreciate it. It's been something that, you know, I worked with the previous chair, I've had several questions. I get 2 or 3 constituent, questions about this every year, and it kind of comes back to the solar siting issue. I mean, could we just put like a little reporting requirement at the end and like direct the appropriate parties to make sure that we get the right people around the table?
I mean, I think that this is absolutely something we need to all work on together. I think the challenge of adding it onto this bill is they would then focus it around community solar only, rather than the much more comprehensive. We need to be looking at solar more broadly and energy siting more broadly. So,
I'm
and
not
there,
talking about integrating it.
right.
I think it'd be really good to have this work group on record.
Right. There is another bill that did pass. Senator Elfreth has a bill that passed the Senate looking at solar tax credits, which also addresses the question of siting. It doesn't deal with the question of siting directly, but it addresses encouraging the solar development away from onto preferred siting like already developed land. So there is no place where we're specifically dealing with solar siting, but we all absolutely understand that much more comprehensive, complicated issue needs to be addressed very broadly. So thank you.
Okay, Senator Watson.
Thank you. I'm trying to wrap my head around your second bullet where we talked about the definition of agrivoltaics. And you talk about it exempts agrivoltaics from the limitation on aggregate space capacity. Is that space capacity the 5 megawatts we talked about?
That's right.
And so if I have one of these on my land that falls under agrivoltaics, I can exceed the 5 megawatts.
That's right.
Now, why do we want to do that? And let me give you my rationale, because I never got my 40 acres. And so there are many people in my community who I've spoken to who don't have the land and kind of look at this as an opportunity for income, much like we're doing when we're dealing with, recreational cannabis. And so here, in one sense, you put limitations, but those folks who have a large amount of land theoretically can put solar down and plant a few trees or what have you, shrubs that fall into these categories and get additional capacity. Is that fair to say?
Well, that's definitely a policy question, but I think that is how it can be used. So page 9, lines 19 through 23 says that if it's used for agrivoltaics, then that megawatt capacity can be exhausted. And I will say there is a actual total solar capacity limit of 3,000 megawatts, if I'm not mistaken. So there are some like constitutional already codified, there are limits within how high the capacity can get for these solar facilities in general. But if we're talking land and allocation and priority.
We have plenty of wealthy landowners. But the way I read this is that I can put the max capacity on that other people can't do simply by planting mushrooms on my property, because that falls under agrivoltaics. Grains and herbs and melons, nuts and seeds and vegetables. I got a problem with that. I think it's a question of fairness, because I look at this as a burgeoning economic opportunity for, a lot of people who may have some land. And as much as we put the brakes on existing folks who own cannabis licenses to keep them from, hoarding all the licenses available, if there is going to be a fixed amount of energy that can be made through community solar, some people have the ability to get the lion's share of available capacity. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that's the way I interpret this exemption, based on what you can put on this property.
I mean, I think that's a fair reading. I'll take a look at it one more time, but it's pretty broad in that carve out. So it's essentially saying.
Oh, Joe.
Right. So threshold of 5 megawatts, list of things that can be exempted from that 5 megawatt requirements. And it doesn't necessarily exempt agrivoltaics or limit how far that can be used, with the exception of there being this ultimate cap on how many of these projects we can, how much energy can come from the net metering that is a result of these solar projects.
Charlie, I think again, this is one area you might have, we live this, just, if you don't mind just weighing in a bit, I think it could be helpful. Yeah.
Yep, my pleasure. Thanks. So there's several ways that you can co-locate. You could co-locate on rooftops. You could co-locate on brownfields. These are sort of like preferred locations. It's more expensive to build on those kind of areas. So that's why you can co-locate, get economies of scale and try to recover, balance the cost of going through a brownfield kind of permitting process with a bigger project. The agrivoltaics is actually one of two options where you can co-locate up to 10 megawatts. So agrivoltaics is one way to do it. The other way to do it is if you have at least 75% of the aggregate capacity of both projects serving LMI customers. So that would mean, in the scenario you're talking about, if somebody's doesn't have those kind of agriculture activities going on, they could still have projects that co-locate on their property if they're going to be serving primarily LMI subscribers. And that latter part falls on the shoulders of the subscriber organization to, meet that requirement. But the sort of definition of what falls into the agrivoltaics area was, as we've talked about, agreed to at the Farm Bureau as basically kind of agriculture activities that are eligible for meeting the agrivoltaics.
My thing is, as many things we discussed it with offshore wind. We discussed it with the recreational cannabis. As I said, this is an opportunity. There's money to be made in this business, right? It's great that we'll be able, folks who are able to set up community solar are going to be able to subsidize, LMI folks to help them see a cost reduction in their bills. But the point of the matter is the folks making the money are the ones who are leasing the space for community solar. And the people who have 10, 15, 20 acres or whatever it is, if you max it out, the question just has to loom in my mind. How many minorities have that kind of land and are able to take advantage of this opportunity? So once again, minorities cannot build generational wealth off of this because we don't own the land to do it. Now, I did some independent research, and of course, somebody just said it helps if the land is already graded to be able to put up community solar. So even somebody like me can't just go out and purchase, some land that's available because there are trees there. I would have to take care of all that grading and be within the proper distance of three-phase power to make that happen. So I've done a little research on this, and I just see this as another situation where the rich get richer. Yeah, there might be a benefit, but I'm still struggling to try to find a way to help minority communities build generational wealth with these new opportunities when these inherent impediments that have existed for some time continue to be relevant today. I just want to say that.
Yeah.
Thank you for your answer.
Okay, yeah, Senator Brooks, your mic, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Senator. 20 acres is going to yield you what, 2 megawatts? So that's going to be the capacity there. 10 acres per megawatt. So, yeah, so they're going to need a lot more land than that to generate that capacity. Yeah. Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly add that the bigger projects are going to be hard to develop because that's a lot of capacity on the grid, the distribution system to find the right place, to find the right land, and connecting those kind of dots. So that's not going to be kind of what's happening. Most of the projects are not going to be like that. It's going to be mostly 2 megawatt projects that can fit into smaller plots of land. And the other point briefly I'll just make is that the program doesn't prevent sort of like ownership by subscribers of projects. It's a harder model to pull off, but I used to work for a company that specifically did that model where the subscribers of the projects actually have kind of an ownership share in the project, not just kind of a subscription credit that they're receiving. So there's ways to do that. But just for land space development, I agree that there's some challenges with regards to kind of who owns the land, who's going to benefit from a lease agreement. That's not the biggest revenue stream for the project, but it is a revenue stream.
Okay, Senator Augustine.
You can stay there. Okay. Because the question is,
there's a change from the subscribers to the solar energy system as far as like the carve out away from the LMI to, unless I'm misreading it, to a nonprofit organization. Is that now what it says?
That's right.
Right?
So
And why? And do you have nonprofits who then would not be subject to, I believe it looks like there are some who are nonprofits who then would not be subject to the LMI. And why would we do that?
It's a good question. So yeah, we originally had in there owned entirely by the individual
That's what it
subscribers,
said.
which can still happen regardless of it saying that or not. But the change to nonprofit was an attempt to address concerns by the utilities that that this was going to become a loophole in the program for industry, for private sector industry to avoid the 40% LMI requirement. And so the kind of scenario that we discussed with Delegate Clippinger was, well, there's cases where a church wants to just have all of their constituents be members. They don't necessarily know if 40% of them are LMI or fall into that definition or not. And there shouldn't be that kind of challenge for them to go out looking for other people outside the church. And so using nonprofit as it was viewed as kind of a more simplified way of saying this is not like a for-profit sort of enterprise opportunity. This is for that type of nature of a project. That said, there's no definition in the bill regarding what nonprofit organization means. And I know just from working with the advocates that we'll be advocating at the PSC that, you know, community-based kind of projects, regardless of whether they're a 501c3 or however you might define it, that should sort of be eligible for them. We want those kind of projects to exist where it's not big companies coming from my trade association, but it's individuals that come together, a group that lives at the end of a neighborhood or a block of neighborhood that are able to do it if they want to. It's a lot of work. You got to go through legal, you got to find a developer, et cetera, to build the project, but nothing prevents that from happening in the bill right now.
But you would agree though that there are also some really big nonprofits that are like, it's just wide open. I mean, we have, you know, a lot of entities that are set up as nonprofits, but then you have, you know, obviously senior executives and stuff like that. I mean, it's just another way to kind of get around some rules and stuff like that. I mean,
That's true.
Then you would be able to get around the LMI.
No, it's
by doing
true.
that.
And we actually talked about this within the LMI, I mean, not the LMI, but the advocates, with the advocates as well. And we thought about, well, should we be more prescriptive on what that means, subscriber organization? But it felt like we didn't want to get into that level of detail at the legislative stage because maybe we would miss the mark if we did that and regret it and then not be able to change it. So that's why I think in the regulatory process, that would be the place to refine what that definition is. And I'll briefly say that the whole reason that that's in the bill in the first place, the community owned kind of thinking, is from the advocates. That's not from the industry. It's not something that industry is kind of angling on. No, it's a good point.
Nonprofits, and that provides some pause for me.
Yeah, okay. I mean, this is, again, while we're here, Senator Brooks, did you have?
That's on page 4.
Did you have a question? Your light was on. You just turned it on. Okay. Okay. Okay, folks, any additional questions for Alexis for
Can I
now?
just-
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just throw this out there?
Absolutely.
She didn't get to it, but I did ask for.
it's in here. It's in the
Yeah, no, I
packet.
know, but I'm saying we didn't talk about it, but we're
Well,
just.
actually,
putting
let's do
everything
that,
on the
'cause I know-
table. That's what the chair
Correct,
said, to just put
correct.
everything on the
Let's
table.
so we did have a copy of Senator Brooks's standalone amendment. I understand Senator Augustine also. Yeah, so let's describe what it is. So again, we can have, you know, even a discussion about that. Again, we're not going to vote it, but we need to, it's good to know what's on the table. Absolutely.
Okay, so we have one standalone from the sponsor, Senator Brooks, and then another from Senator Ellis. So the sponsor standalone amendment, just that lone wolf sheet of
Senator Ellis?
paper.
Did Senator Ellis?
I said Senator Ellis?
Yes.
Oh,
You
wow.
confused us all.
That's weird. I don't know why.
Okay.
No,
okay.
It's okay. I don't know why I said that. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's weird.
Okay, we
Okay.
meant Senator Augustine.
Yeah, that's odd. Yeah, so it makes sense. Okay, so standalone sheet of paper, SB 613-753323. So this is intended to clarify billing. So in the event there is a retail supplier that's issuing a bill. Under current standards, as I understand them, and it gets sort of technical from here, there is a prioritization that happens between the purchase of receivables and other portions of the bill. This amendment, the sponsor amendment, attempts to codify that process so it doesn't change the current billing scheme when when utility companies are ready to accrue all of their profits. So it's codifying a current practice specific to purchase of receivables as that consolidated billing mechanism. There may be some detail that's lacking, so Charlie, feel free to chime in.
You already did a nice job, Alexis. It is pretty nuancy. It's pretty wonky, but it's getting at something that's more familiar in the retail supplier world, which is through purchase of receivables. In the retail supplier world, they also can do consolidated billing, and the receivables that the kind of utility is purchasing from them is done so or can be done so at a discount because the utility is assuming the collection risk associated with the customers paying what is being charged by the retail supplier. And so the retail suppliers for this bill, they just want to make sure that that discount rate kind of formula doesn't get messed with in a way that could hurt them and reduce their revenue streams from that receivables process. So it's very wonky. It took us some time to understand, but we got to the same page with NRG, who had proposed the amendment. And I think the language that we provided kind of is the right balance of meeting the need there. I mean, it kind of gets to it, that there's two different forms of consolidated billing. There's purchase of receivables, and then there's something called net crediting. Net crediting is honestly what we're pushing for. I've talked to utilities about it. They're receptive to it here in Maryland. It's what's done in New York. It's much simpler. It doesn't involve the kind of two-step process of issuing credits and pulling back. It just immediately issues a net credit to the customer, and then the subscriber organization gets their payment. But it's all wonky. And I just want to say that, there's no kind of angling on anything there. It's just basically to kind of check the box for energy.
We're going to try to if we're talking about the Senator Brooks's amendment, then we want to talk about Senator Augustine's as well. But Senator Washington, just on get back on the Brooks amendment. Any questions you have? It's wide open here.
Well, it was on the dual, the combined billing. So I heard that there was a concern about the percentage. So, right, so what I read is that it's usually between 1% and 3%. So are we proposing 1% as a cap on what if we're going to do combined billing? So essentially, the utility would offer combined billing for a fee. And we're saying that fee can be no more than 1%. Is that what we're saying?
That's where we started, but the amendments made in 908 says it can go above 1%.
How far? What
There's no limit. It just says if the utility can prove that those costs are incurred, then they can.
So the standards, I would suggest that we not accept a no limit. So, because could you put 5%? Could it be 20? It seems like what I read out there is that somewhere between 1 and 3. So, so 2 or something, but I definitely would not, we definitely can't cap that. The other thing I wanted to ask about is the other side of the dual billing. There seems to be raised something about that the third party utility, if someone doesn't pay their bill, right, in the current scenario, what happens? Is there cut are in Maryland, are any of these utilities cutting off service?
So that's between the utility and the customer.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
I may bring up one point of that 1% cap, Senator. So it would have to be an appeal to the commission, and the commission would find that evidence in order to raise the cap. So there, to the extent that is clarifying, they would have the commissioners, they would come at a hearing, they would have to present evidence that shows that it's substantial. in order to raise
Okay,
it.
just
So it'd
not
be
a simple, just to be
proceeding.
clear, that I think the language is something like substantial evidence or
Right.
I mean, it's gotta be really, really
just
compelling,
and
but anyway.
reasonable.
Yeah.
I understand that's, you're raising a lot, solid point, just saying, clarify.
Mhm.
Okay, anything, yes, Senator Brooks.
Yeah, that, I'm sorry, Chair. Yeah, that's all I was gonna say. And in the bill, what it says, that there is a 1% fee on that, but if it's higher, then the utility companies would have to justify substantial evidence to justify that additional cost. So they just wouldn't be passing costs on. And I think it's in New York, and Alexis can verify it, that where they use the consolidated billing, and then the fees did not exceed that 1%. So there is some history there.
That's right. That's where the 1% came from. They used the same language in New York, and the utilities have to report annually what it is. And as to my knowledge, it's all been below 1% to date in New York.
Okay, anything more on this? I would like to get Senator Augustine's amendment on the table, just so everybody knows. So Alexis, why don't you, or Senator Augustine for that matter, I'm sorry?
Right, yep, that's in there.
It's in the
So-
back. If you look at the packet on page 28,
Yeah,
page 28,
that's right.
Senator Augustine's amendment. And if you want to describe it, Senator Augustine can then also weigh in on what his intent is here.
Okay, and I'll just say, as a caveat, the same amendments, the same sponsor amendments have been posed by the sponsor of the House bill. So everywhere where there's a Brooks name attached, the House bill before us would be kind of suited to amend to the two. The one standalone would be Senator Augustine's and any others that we may consider. All right, so page 28 is Senator Augustine's amendment, and this also deals with billing. It essentially says that a organization that bills folks for community solar, enrolls individuals in community solar, has to make sure that specific to low to moderate income subscribers, there is at least a 10% bill credit applied to their bill. So the organizations have to give at least a 10% bill credit to low to moderate income individuals.
Yeah, Senator Augustine.
For my explanation, so I just have the conversations that I've had is that this will be a savings for the folks who participate in the program, that is the nature of the program. I have been concerned because I've seen where but we aren't putting that in the statute. But we've seen in other cases where there are bad actors who take advantage of a situation when we don't provide protections, and they might say charge more than what it would otherwise be. And there have been instances when this started with community solar, not just community solar, but there have been in choice, discussions around choice, where people have decided that they wanted to pay more in order to be green, for example. So things would be sold as being, okay, you want to be green in what you're doing, and you're willing to pay a little bit of a premium for that. And I've seen that in the past. What this was trying to do was trying to just provide some protection for the low and moderate income folks, not hurting the program, but making sure that the program lived up to what it was. The only thing, and it does it, but the only thing that caught my attention, if I'm just being honest, in this situation now, though, is that, and that was my intent, and the intent was to try to make sure that people did get some positive benefit. But then I see the amendment, which says that even though they may get a 10% credit, you could eat it all up with the subscriber fee. It couldn't go above nothing. But am I misreading that?
Yeah, so
I definitely want clarification. I really want it.
This is very important. I think maybe the most important part of the bill.
Can I just direct everybody's attention to Rob Gargel with Compass on behalf of CCSA. If I can just direct everybody's attention to page 16, M, at the very bottom. And in fact, the House wasn't asking for this amendment, but it was actually an amendment that was put in because of some of the questions that Senator Augustine and Senator Washington raised at the hearing on Senator Brooks's bill. And what M is saying is a subscriber organization or subscription coordinator. So that's where you're going to get the community solar from if you're a consumer, from them, may not charge a residential subscriber. So that's me, the consumer, who is not participating in consolidated billing. And I'm going to come back to that. So there's N, which is consolidated billing. M, as in Michael, is not consolidated billing. A subscription rate. So when you get into the community solar program, if Senator Washington wanted to do community solar at her home, she would pay a subscription rate, okay, to be a participant. That is, so may not charge a subscription rate that is more than the, turn to the next page, monetary value of the bill credit on a bill issued by an electric company to the subscriber for electric service. So what that means is that language says the credit you get as a consumer, if Senator Washington got a community solar, has to exceed the subscription charge. So with that, that's what that language says for M. N says the exact same thing if you're in consolidated billing. So what that's saying is, so in other words, the added cost to Senator Washington, if you decide to do community solar, your cost will be the subscription charge. That subscription charge, and there's a good example on the last page, page 30. This may help explain it. So if you go to page 30, you get your BG&E bill. There's supply charges, there's delivery charges, there's other fees. Your bill might be $150. Now you want to participate in community solar. And so, well, that's going to cost you $90 more. What this language says is you will be mandated a credit greater than, which in community solar to date, it's never been less than the subscription charge. But because of the questions that came up in this committee, we're putting in statute that the credit must be greater than the subscription charge. So in this example, the credit is $100. So you're actually, by joining community solar, you're going to save $10 because the subscription charge is 90, your credit's 100, and you can apply that $10 to your BG&E bill. That's a new thing that you would not be able to do if you didn't participate in community solar. So we're putting in the language, whether you're in consolidated billing or not. M is the not, N is a Nancy, is you're going to get a credit. Your amendment, Senator, guarantees a specific percentage. And if you want to go that route for LMI, there's a do you have the language? There's a way to do that if you want to say it must be X, at least X, and it would mirror that language. And we can provide this to Alexis, but essentially, if you look at M and N again and follow along with what I'm about to read, a subscriber organization or subscription coordinator, so that kind of tracks M and N, may not charge an LMI subscriber, because I think your definition talks about LMI and then it uses part of the definition. But if you say LMI subscriber at the beginning of the bill, you can see the definition. It brings in everything, which I think would be your intent. But if there was something else you were looking to do.
That's it.
So if that's your LM may not charge an LMI subscriber a subscription rate, that's the cost you would pay to join community solar, that is more than 90%
That's all I was saying.
of the monetary value of the bill credit on a bill issued by the electric company to subscribe for the electric. So that then mirrors. And so what I would suggest from a drafting standpoint is if you make M1 and make the current N as a Nancy M2 and drop this into N, which probably makes more sense for it to be placed there with respect to kind of placement and flow. It basically reads, look, if you're not LMI, you're going to have some credit, unspecified, what the market dictates, whether you're in consolidated billing or not. And if you're an LMI, it's got to be at least the 10%, essentially, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And let me just add, this actually duplicates, a few sessions ago, Senator Washington, we had a similar kind of discussion about retail suppliers with folks on energy assistance. And if you recall, and Senator Augustine was on the committee, that was the biggest thing. We can't let retail suppliers, selling. And so this, I think,
is different though.
It's totally different, but the same principle about getting hoodwinked to something you don't want. And so I just want to say that this language was not in the original bill, but it was, I think, is addressing this in part. Okay, we've got Senator Carozza.
So can I clarify before
Sure.
we do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
We've decided that we're still gonna mandate that 10% credit, Senator. Is that still what the intent is?
I'm okay with the way that, I would,
The new
I
ad.
usually call him, but Mr. Garagiola, I'm not used to calling him that. What he said, as far as that's my intent.
Well, we
That was my intent, and
Right.
that we're in alignment,
Mhm.
that's really what I was trying to do. The language of how it fits to be a better fit.
Yeah, we
That
can work the
makes sense.
technical and
Yeah,
obviously,
that was
with
my
you
intent.
involved. Again, okay, we've got Senator Carozza, did you have a question? Then we'll go to Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for walking through the bill credit, the subscription charge. And I just, again, when you were doing that walkthrough with the example, that was very helpful. I was going to that page 30 when you were doing the walkthrough on the community solar subscription, that if the charge is $90, there would always be a guarantee of a bill credit for above that. And that's no matter, that's in any situation, right? That doesn't get into who the subscriber is. That's just operating for any subscriber. Is that
We
correct?
put in the bill an M and N on page 16. And 17, M and N, so M and N, the current M and the current N say for anybody. And what I'm proposing is make the current M M1 and make the current N M2, and then drop in this language that says, so basically the new M would be like, if you don't have consolidated billing, the credit will exceed the cost of the subscription. M2 would say, if you do have consolidated billing, and you're anybody, you'll get a credit that's greater than the subscription charge. And then the new N would say, if you're an LMI subscriber, the the ratio from the credit to the subscription cost would essentially be, you can't be more than 90% of the credit. So if the credit's 100, kind of like the example on page 30, then the subscription charge can't be more than 90. Could be less, but it can't be more. And that's LMI.
So I get, but what you just described then would be for every subscriber,
So
correct?
every
Or-
subscriber will save money on their electric bill.
Right.
LMI, we're specifying a specific percentage because that's the distinction that Senator Augustine wanted.
Above, so every subscriber
Will save money,
will say, but then this amendment would make a designated.
would
a
add.
guaranteed amount.
So anyone who's not LMI would get savings. Anyone who is LMI would essentially get a 10%. So it would-
And just to,
Minimum.
Yeah,
just to
minimum.
clarify, it's not
okay, and just to better understand, have we done this in other areas? In other words, because this is I just want to I understand the intention, but I'm trying to understand if we go down this road with
I think we.
this in the private sector, this one area, do we now open it up? And I'm just trying to better understand. I don't know.
Yeah, what we have done elsewhere, at least for community solar outside of Maryland, is what is in the bill now, that's required already for consolidated billing in New York. The bill credit must exceed the subscription charge there, and that just simplifies things from consolidated billing. They want to guarantee that. That's what we've done in the bill with the amendments, is provide that same kind of guarantee. What Rob was saying is that in practice, it happens anyways. That's how these kind of third-party invested projects, they require savings to customers,
Right,
but
you're giving examples from other states. I was trying to understand if we've done this before. And again, not having the background on these
not sure.
issues in other areas in Maryland. So I just want to know that. And then my other question is, when we talk about the subscriber, when they pay that subscription, the community solar subscription, and we're doing this consolidated billing, so who are they paying the subscription to? And then does the community solar and utilities, work behind the scenes? In other words, who are they actually? I understand the concept of one bill. I'm just trying to figure out who you're paying every month. Or who
And
you pay the
also, when
subscription.
you say, Senator Augustine wanted to weigh in, and then we'll go to Senator Washington, but just on this issue.
What I wanted to share, Rosa, is that if it wasn't last year, it may have been the year before, we actually did create, we put into statute the ability to have different prices, which is part of what you're talking about. That we did, and we did that for literally for utilities to be able to create programs for low and moderate income Marylanders at a different rate. So we actually already, yeah, we already did that as a part of another bill that we had when we were in the pandemic and we were really struggling. And so we wanted to create the opportunity. No, it's not in that way because we actually had to codify that when we did that process.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And just from like the kind of free market perspective, we're glad that we would prefer it be a minimum as opposed to it has to be 10%. Minimum means it could be 15, 20%. Like you want the market to kind of compete on something like that. You want the savings to be higher if possible.
The 10% out of the air. What it was in conversation actually with the industry folks. They were like, no, this is how we do our business. This is how we, it's always in that range, 10, whatever, something like that. They were comfortable that that's like in their business model. All I was saying is, okay, I understand that, but I have experienced where, we got constituents and stuff like that, where we hear one thing here, but then when we get, we don't put protections in place, it just doesn't end up happening. And so since there is such a
Minimum of 10. Minimum of 10.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, Senator Washington, why don't you put your,
Yeah. Yeah, there's, so the way, so it can work in those two different ways, net crediting or purchase of receivables. But in general, the utility is the one, so in purchase of receivables, the customer, the subscriber organization is going to tell the utility, I'm owed $100 by that subscriber. And this utility is going to issue the bill credit. And let's say it's $110. I'm sorry to confuse you there. But that the subscription charge is $100. So they're going to charge the customer $100 to be able to relay that back to the subscriber organization. So probably every month, the utility is going to send the subscriber organization what they're owed based on what they collected from the customer. On your purchase of receivables, subscriber organization always is kind of kept whole, but that discount rate kind of impacts the risk.
Be paid to who, and is it a one-time, or how does that work?
So the subscription charge is basically just built into the arrangement between the subscriber organization and the customer. Subscriber organizations tell the customer, sign up for this project. You're going to get $100 of bill credits every month. It's going to fluctuate with generation of the project. And you're going to pay me 90% of that. So $90 of the 100 is going to go to the subscriber organization, but you can do it through consolidated billing and pay it on your bill. So it all happens on one bill. The utility will pay the money, the actual dollars back to the subscriber organization. Right. That's right. Yep.
okay, Senator Washington.
So something I think I've learned about how utilities make money, I just want to make sure this is right, that we do guarantee a rate of return or a net. So we actually guarantee the utilities themselves some rate of return, right? And so we clearly have precedent for being involved in the market in that way. I want to understand the difference, and I think I'm building on the senator from the Eastern Shore, the difference between the being a subscriber and then this additional fee for combined billing, because they're different, right?
Right.
So, okay,
That's right.
So,
yeah, there's a charge that goes to the subscriber organization that the subscriber pays. It comes out of the credit of the bill. So the subscriber's never going to be paying a net cost. They're always going to just be using a portion of their bill credit to pay the subscriber organization. And then if you're doing consolidated billing, there's a fee that's placed on the subscriber organization, not on the customer. And that fee is based on a percentage of the credit value. We talked about that. It's at 1%. Maybe it's a little more, maybe it's less. But that falls on the shoulders of the subscriber organization, not on the customer.
I just wanted to clarify what we were addressing in M and N, that it doesn't have anything to do with capping.
Correct.
1% charge.
That's right.
Okay, I just
Yep.
wanted to
Yeah,
make sure
it's
that was
confusing.
separate. Okay,
Yep.
all right,
Yeah,
thank you.
different issue.
Yep.
Okay. Well, look, folks, as I say, some of the questions outstanding, we'd like to know where the stakeholder entities are. I think that was one, and in the meantime, between now and tomorrow, because again, I'd really just, I get a sense that people want to do a little homework. I'm sure you guys will be available for some questions. Alexis obviously available. And then when we come back here tomorrow and do some more voting, I really want to take this up. So any final questions before we adjourn for today? Yes, Senator Watson.
Find silviculture. Silviculture, page 3. It's under that, my favorite section, the agrivoltaic.
We might have to ask the,
Forestry,
Thank
growing
you.
trees, forestry.
Growing trees, forestry.
So you say forestry.
Take it up with DLS.
That's what the Farm Bureau gave us.
It's a farm bureau. Take it up with Colby Ferguson. Okay, Senator Augustine.
Wanted to say that Senator Jackson did get to me and say that he was fine with the HB 573, the way that it was.
Okay, whose bill was that? I lost my voting list here.
Yeah, Boapo.
Stacy? Okay, let's, okay, guys, thank you. And we'll do this again tomorrow. A shortened format.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the vote.